After a short stint of lounging around in the luxury of my home, the excitement from my last 2 adventures began to fade, and the boredom crept back in. Even though the memories of danger were still fresh, the call of the unknown was stronger. So once more, I packed up the finest goods from Baghdad, headed to Balsora, and set sail with some merchant buddies for far-off lands. We made some good profits, stopping at various ports, but one day, a violent storm hit us out on the open sea. It raged for days, throwing us off course, and eventually slamming us into the shore of a bizarre island. "I'd rather be anywhere but here," our captain said grimly. "This island and the ones around it are swarming with hairy savages. They're small but vicious, and if you kill one, the rest will swarm like ants and tear you apart." His words sent a chill through us. We soon discovered he was right. A horde of hideous little savages, not more than 2 feet tall and covered in reddish fur, swam out to our ship. They clambered aboard, chattering in a language we couldn't understand, and swarmed over the deck like a plague. We watched helplessly, knowing we couldn't fight them off. They took over the ship, hoisted the sails, and steered us to a nearby island. There, they abandoned us on the shore and sailed off, leaving us stranded. We turned away from the sea and wandered inland, surviving on whatever fruits and herbs we could find. In the distance, we spotted what looked like a grand palace and made our way towards it, hoping for sanctuary. When we got closer, we saw it was actually a towering fortress. Pushing open the heavy doors, we stumbled into a courtyard and then into a great hall, only to be met with a gruesome sight. One side of the hall was piled high with human bones, and the other was lined with spits for roasting. We collapsed, horrified and exhausted. At sunset, the doors burst open, and a giant stepped in. He was as tall as a palm tree, with jet-black skin, a single blazing eye in the center of his forehead, and sharp, grinning teeth. His lower lip drooped onto his chest, and his massive ears flapped like elephant ears over his shoulders. His nails were like the claws of a bird of prey. We were paralyzed with fear. The giant examined us, picking me up by the neck and inspecting me like a piece of meat. Finding me too skinny, he put me down and moved on to the others. He found our captain to be the plumpest and skewered him on a spit, roasting him over a fire. After eating, the giant lay down and snored like a thunderstorm, while we lay shivering in terror all night. When dawn broke, he left, and we were left to our despair. We wandered the island, seeking a way to escape, but returned to the fortress by nightfall as there was nowhere else to go. The giant came back, had another of our comrades for dinner, and slept again. We were in a nightmare we couldn't wake up from. On the 3rd day, I gathered the boldest of my companions and laid out a desperate plan. We built several rafts from driftwood along the shore, ready to escape. That night, after the giant fell asleep, we heated some spits in the fire and plunged them into his single eye, blinding him. He roared in pain and stumbled out of the fortress, and we fled to our rafts. At dawn, we saw the blinded giant returning with 2 other giants just as fearsome. They hurled massive rocks at us, sinking all the rafts except mine. We rowed furiously, just barely escaping their reach, and were left at the mercy of the sea. The next day, we reached another island. We found some fruits and tried to rest, but soon a monstrous snake slithered towards us, grabbing one of my companions and crushing him to death before swallowing him whole. My other companion and I fled up a tree, but the snake returned at night and devoured him too, leaving me alone and terrified. Desperate, I built a makeshift shelter of thorns and brushwood under the tree. The snake tried to get in but couldn't, and by morning it slithered away. Exhausted and scared, I stumbled down to the shore, thinking of ending it all, when I saw a ship. I waved my turban frantically, and they rescued me. On board, I told my story. The captain, seeing my ragged state, took pity on me. After some time, we reached the island of Salahat, where sandalwood grows. The captain asked me to trade some goods for a dead passenger named Sindbad the sailor. Shocked, I revealed myself as Sindbad. The captain, surprised and relieved, gave me the goods and the profits he made. We traveled to several islands, collecting valuable spices, and finally returned to Balsora. Back in Baghdad, I shared my wealth with the poor and settled down, richer than ever. When I finished my tale, I gave Hindbad another 100 sequins, and the guests departed, returning the next day for more of my stories.